All right, let's get right into it. Tonight we're talking about a story of pure European glory, but also profound human emotion and that razor-thin line between triumph and tragedy. This was a night that felt like something from a legend, a story from the past, but it was all happening right now under the crushing weight of the present. And look, to get just how massive this night was, you only need to read this quote. I mean, this isn't just a casual comparison. This is a measure of history itself. We're talking about the legendary Brian Clough, the man who led them to back-to-back European Cups. Not since then has this club seen a stage this bright. Decades of waiting, and it all came down to this one evening. And that really brings us to the heart of this story, ghosts and dreams. Because, this match was never just about 90 minutes of football. No way. This was about a club wrestling with its own incredible, legendary past, while at the same time fighting for its very survival today. And you can see that pressure perfectly laid out right here. On one side, you have the ghost of greatness. I mean, their first European semifinals since 1984, a history that boasts two European Cups. But then you look at the reality, and it is brutal. 4 different managers in this season alone, and a desperate, grinding relegation battle in the Premier League. So the stakes, they just couldn't have been any higher. So just when you think you have a handle on how this story might unfold, the game just explodes. In a span of just 4 minutes, a totally chaotic, game-altering sequence happens that would go on to define the entire night. It was unbelievable. Okay, so brace yourselves because this all happened in a flash, where at the 8th minute, there's a high, reckless challenge on Chris Wood. It goes to VAR and boom, straight red card for Porto's Jan Bednarek. Just 4 minutes later, at the 12th minute, bam, goal. Morgan Gibbs-White puts Forest in the lead, the place goes wild. But then the twist, by the 17th minute, Chris Wood, the guy who was fouled to begin with, he can't continue. He's forced to limp off with an injury. It was just utter chaos, and just like that, Forest's whole game plan is thrown into question. But that goal, the one that came out of all that madness, it meant so much more than just a 1-0 lead. This was a moment that was truly, deeply more than a goal. It was a tribute in a time of incredible grief. 1 goal, that's all it took on the score sheet. And it was scored by the captain, Morgan Gibbs-White. But as soon as he scored, he didn't just run off and celebrate. He immediately held up a shirt with a message that just cut through all the noise of the stadium. Family first. We're all with you. You see, this wasn't just some spontaneous thing. It was this powerful, public show of support for his teammate, Elliot Anderson, whose mother had tragically passed away in the build-up to this huge game. In their biggest moment, they showed they were a family. It was a moment that just completely transcended sport. But that emotional high, it couldn't last. With a 1-goal lead and almost the entire game left to play, Forest had to do just one thing. They had to survive the storm. They had to dig in and hold on against a furious 10-man Porto, who, despite the disadvantage, simply refused to back down. And how close did Porto get? Well, this close. They rattled the woodwork not once, but twice in a second half that was just absolutely nail-biting. And we're not talking about half chances here. First, William Gomez somehow, and I mean somehow, manages to hit the crossbar from just 3 yards out. An unbelievable miss. Then, Alan Varela just thumps this wicked long-range effort that smashes into the very same crossbar. You could feel the entire stadium just hold its breath. And while all this was happening, Forest were paying a heavy physical price for this fight. A staggering 3 key players were forced off with injuries: Wood, Hudson-Odoi, and Murillo. They were literally putting their bodies on the line just to hold on to this lead. And they did it. They survived. But as that final whistle blew and the celebrations erupted, a pretty sobering reality started to set in. We've seen the glory. Now we have to face the cost. Because this was a truly historic victory, but it came with a very bittersweet aftermath. And right here, this is the heart of the dilemma. On one side, you have the triumph. Forest are in their first European semifinal in 42 years. That is a monumental achievement. But on the other side, the tragedy. Key players are now injured, and they are staring down a must-win league match against Burnley that could decide their very survival. So the celebration? It's definitely tempered by a looming crisis. And so that leaves us right here, a night of undeniable European glory, a moment that fans have been waiting decades for.
where the team rallied together through adversity and through grief. But as the dust settles on this historic win, you have to ask the question, will this one night of glory end up costing them everything?